I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
A dandy and aspic is over. Who do you think you are, Al Capone? I don't know. I just needed a reference.
Yeah, there you
go. All right. Dandy and aspic. Where would you like to start? I have an idea.
I think we need to start with this title, this crazy title of this movie.
Why? Like, this is one of those examples of a movie title that almost immediately dates itself. Like, when do you think people would see this title and think, what the hell does that mean? The first people who said, what the hell does that mean? I mean, was it a year later? Was it 5 years later? But very quickly in cinema history.
Well, yeah, I mean, just breaking it down, dandies. A dandy is a man, I'm reading this all from Wikipedia. A dandy is a man who places particular importance upon physical appearance and personal grooming, refined language, and leisurely hobbies. A dandy could be a self-made man, both in person and persona, who emulates the aristocratic style of life, regardless of his middle-class origin, birth, and background, especially during the late 18th and early 19th centuries in Britain.
Please see Yankee Doodle.
Yeah. Now there's British dandyism, there's French dandyism, and there's black dandyism, all according to Wikipedia. And often you have the types of people who become famous for being famous and celebrated based on nothing at all except for personal charm and social connections.
So that's like the Golden Globes.
So that's exactly what these are, right? And I think in the scope of our film, okay, you get Pierre Cardin to dress the star and the leading lady, and I guess that makes him a dandy. I guess, because he's a spy. It's not like he is not doing anything. You know, he's actually doing quite a bit of things.
He's doing two things.
And a lot of things. So that's the dandy part. Now, aspic is a meat jelly. It's a... Aspic or meat jelly is a meat jelly. Just saying those two words together, like who thought of this? Is a savory gelatin made with a meat stock or broth set in a mold to encase other ingredients. These often include pieces of meat, seafood, vegetable, or eggs. Aspic is also sometimes referred to as an aspic jelly. In its simplest form, aspic is essentially a gelatinous version of conventional soup. Now that last part... of all of this, it sounds disgusting, but at least the last part made me go, okay, if you just took soup and it just chilled and turned it to gel, I guess I can most easily picture that as something people would actually eat. I'm not saying I'd eat it, and I'm saying like all of this, especially if you go at Aspic on Wikipedia and just look at all these pictures, it is revolting. Now, I understand that there are people who probably still eat this. You know, kudos to you. All more power to you. It's just gross. It just looks like cold fat full of chunks of meat and vegetables like stuck in it is really what it looks like.
It does. And if you do a search for like Google Images search of these things, you should, because it is delightfully creative what people do with their aspic molds. There is one I happen to be looking at now, which somebody made an aspic mold of SpaghettiOs.
Wow.
It's just, you just slice yourself a slice of SpaghettiOs. Yeah. It is, oh my God. I mean, it's really hard. It's got like a floret of hot dogs on the top of it. I don't even...
They're Vienna sausages.
Vienna sausage. You see it too.
Yeah,
you're there.
I was looking at that one, yeah.
It's
so
incredible.
Yeah, so this is a type of food called a Schadenfreude, which is a French term meaning hot cold, meaning they prepare it hot and then serve it cold. And apparently it came into prominence in America in the early 20th century. And by the 50s, meat aspic was a popular dinner staple, as were other gelatin-based dishes such as tomato aspic. Now, they've started doing, mostly it was meats that they would use in aspics, but they did start doing like fruit and vegetable flavored aspics. So eventually you could get some that looked a little more dessert-ish, where it's like a fruit mold, right? Where it just has like bananas and strawberries and peaches and stuff. And I imagine that might taste a little better.
But
than
they're
these
not
other
still,
ones.
they're not using the meat fat gelatin anymore.
No, I
for
don't.
those,
Right,
please.
no, yeah. I hope not.
That's just Jell-O, right? It's pretty much just like Jell-O.
It's like gelatin. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
a chilled gelatin. Yeah, that I think that you use. But like this one that I'm looking at, it's a Prosecco fruit salad aspic. It uses Prosecco wine, gelatin, and sugar to make the base, which actually sounds kind of tasty.
Yeah.
And then berries, oranges, and quince.
Here's the thing. I love jelly beans. I love jelly beans. I love the gummies, right? Like all those like gummy candies I love. There is no reason I should not destroy the Prosecco fruit salad aspic. I don't like the name Aspic anymore because I've seen what else you do with it with like pig feet.
Yeah, right. What's interesting is aspic. There are 3 types of aspic, Pete. There is a delicate aspic, which is a very soft one. There's a sliceable aspic, which are mostly what we're looking at the pictures of, where you just cut a slice of it and eat it. And then there is actually an aspic that they make. It's not even one you can eat. It's an inedible aspic that you just make for decoration.
What?
And I'm just like, why are you even doing that then? Like, it's extra gross. It's like, I'm going to take this food and then preserve it so that I can like hang it on the wall.
Oh God. Oh my God. Did you find the shrimp tomato aspic?
I haven't seen that one yet.
It has crab legs, like the claws coming out, like erupting from it, erupting out the middle of it, like it's a monster coming in through the annihilation hole.
Wow.
This is a terrifying thing, a terrifying thing that I'm watching right here.
Yeah, I am amazed that it is so popular and that people still are being
to whom
like
now?
having so much fun to be creative doing these sorts of things. Yeah. Like here's one. It's got the lobster tail bursting out of the middle of it. Yeah.
Oh God.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like really, if you're under 60,
why are you making aspic?
Why are you making this? Do you know what? There are so many other structured foods. You got gingerbread house. Go make a gingerbread house.
I am curious, like on food shows, is there ever saying, well, I really would love this week for your challenge, I would love you to make me a tasty aspic.
What would Paul Hollywood and Prue Leith say to an aspic bake? Oh, I've got my cakes and my biscuits, and they're going to be suspended in aspics. And then Prue and Paul just start vomiting.
It's just so weird.
That was when the Bake Off was canceled.
Yeah, right. So anyway, that's aspic, and that's our title, A Dandy and Aspic, because it's essentially a well-dressed man stuck in a sticky situation is basically what the title means.
And that title,
long story short,
is not as sexy as A Dandy and Aspic. I don't know. I might see that movie. A double agent in stickiness is better than A Dandy and Aspic.
Although I will say, I actually like that they went with something really weird and creative for it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it doesn't sell the movie as like it sells it in a way where I feel like this is going to be like a spoof or something. Like it just doesn't come across as something that's meant to be serious. But I mean, again, we're not in the period in Americana when aspic was taken seriously.
Yes. Wait, just before we leave aspic, do you see in your rigorous research, was aspic are aspic dishes known anywhere else in the world, like the non-English speaking world?
It's all over the place.
Seriously?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Does it make you feel like we're the ones who are out of sync?
Well, maybe. But here's the thing. It is very popular in Croatia, Serbia, Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, Moldova, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Slovakia, Hungary, Greece, and Ukraine. You can certainly see a part of the world that is aspic crazy, right? It's like kind of that Eastern Europe. Maybe that ties into, East Berlin. Who knows?
I'm also in crazy.
Russia, Belarus, Georgia, they have another thing that they do that's aspic-ish during Christmas and Easter. And Yeah. And that's just that part of the world. It's also Korea, Nepal, and where was the other place I saw? Denmark, Belgium, China, and Vietnam. They all have different types of aspects that's popular in culture.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we have just been left behind.
Yeah. In fact, here's one in China. They use pig trotters, and it's called salted pork in jelly.
Oh, I don't care. Like, is pig trotters better than dandy and aspic?
A pork jelly is an aspic made from low-grade cuts of pig meat, such as trotters, that contain a significant proportion of connective tissue. It just gets worse and worse. Oh, wow.
What, like, before you knew this was a movie, if I had introduced the concept of aspic to you and said, here's a dish called a dandy and aspic, what do you imagine it would actually be?
Well, I would say, okay, it's a dandy, so it's going to be something that either looks like a dandelion, like yellow sorts of bursting color thing, or it's going to be fancy looking because a dandy wearing fancy clothes. I would say, okay, so I would have said, okay, it sounds like something that's a little more like a dessert, like a dandy and aspic sounds like you're going to get one of those, Prosecco fruit aspects.
Well, that would be better than what I had in my head. I saw one with eggs in it, and I thought, what if you just take a tray of deviled eggs and preserve them in meat jelly? That's a dandy aspic.
Oh.
Okay. Anyway, there's a movie that shares the title of this incredible dish.
And we have to say, we need to blame all of this on Derek Marlowe, the author who wrote the book, A Dandy and Aspic, upon which this is based. It's his fault.
Yeah, it's his fault. What
he came up with,
good sir, were you thinking?
Well, it was his first novel. He didn't know what good titles were and just said, that sounds great. And maybe later he realized, yeah, maybe it wasn't.
Oof, this entire course of discussion has made me so hot. Okay, so the movie then.
Yes.
What did you think of let's pretend we didn't know anything about the food. What did you think of
initial thoughts
of the film?
Yeah. It's an interesting film. I enjoyed a lot of elements of it. I enjoyed it felt like they were going for that the spy who came in from the cold, Jean Le Carré type of kind of spy story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you definitely get this sense that okay, there's double agents, all these double crosses, and we're following our main character who is an actual Russian operative working as a British spy, and so like there were interesting elements in the film, and I enjoyed all of those things. I enjoyed Lawrence Harvey. I enjoyed Tom Courtenay. I enjoyed the characters. I feel like by the time we're kind of digging into it a little bit, I felt like it was a little wandering, and I don't know if sloppy is the right word, but it just felt like the story wasn't as cohesive as I wanted it to be. I really struggled with everything involving Mia Farrow. I mean, she was enjoyable enough in the film as Mia Farrow goes, but I struggled with her accent and I struggled with the point of her character. And then we get to the end and I'm like, okay, I enjoyed like where we went with when we got to the end of the film, but I just felt like it just took a long time, doing what they wanted it to do.
Yeah, I'll give you the Mia Farrow point. That was, I think her character survives on raw performance charisma because she is pointless in the movie. I think just looking at her, she's just adorable and she bounces around. She shows up whenever you don't expect her. And also she was kind of in the way of moving the plot forward.
Well, yeah, she felt like, okay, we're introducing this woman into the story because we need somebody in here who Lawrence Harvey's character, Eberlin, or whatever his Russian name is, Krasnevin, is because she's always there. Like she always shows up everywhere he goes, to the point where it's kind of ridiculous.
And her weird bag carrying photo boyfriend who she mostly just sends away.
Yeah, that was strange. But it's like it's so pervasive with her in the film that it feels like she has to be involved in some capacity. Like, why would she be in every single place that he goes if not that she has been hired by one side or the other to be watching him in some capacity?
Right.
And it doesn't ever play out that way. It just goes nowhere. And it left me going, okay, well then what was the point of her character? You know?
Yeah.
It was just odd.
It felt exactly that way to me, as if they forgot to shoot some pages in the directorial handoff. That it was. I mean, you say it wasn't. What'd you say? It wasn't cohesive.
Yeah,
I think was your word. I totally relate to that. I don't know if it was an issue of just changing hands. My understanding is that Anthony Mann shot 90% of it before he passed away, and Lawrence Harvey, our protagonist, took over as director to finish the film. But a lot can happen in editing, and who knows? Because it feels like there were pieces just straight up missing from this movie to answer some of these questions, and I think that is problematic. I like the ideas in the movie. I like the idea of what Eberlin is going through with these dual identities and alienation, and that he can never have one home because he has two lives. The whole paranoia and distrust motif, it's the Cold War, right? The setting is just begging for not trusting anybody. And that's our primary problem. Maybe that's why Mia Farrow is such a weird MacGuffin, that we just aren't supposed to trust her just because she's there, right? Like that's, I don't know. I think you already mentioned Spy Who Came In From the Cold, like that idea, this whole like burnout and disillusionment theme, I think is playing well in the movie, and everybody's bad. Like I think that one of the interesting things about this movie is that the East and the West are both like it's a really blurry line between who the good guys are and the bad guys. And I think this is a movie that essentially says, we're going to follow a guy who's ostensibly, to our eyes, a bad guy, right? He's a Russian spy, but we're going to have to sympathize with him because he's also our protagonist. And that's a hard line to walk. I think, I couldn't help but think of the Americans as I was watching this, but the Americans were Russian agents.
The show, not just in general, the American
Not just population. In general, no, the show. They were Russian agents planted in the United States as to spy, but they were not also spies. They were travel agents. And I think removing that layer made the Americans a better Dandy and Aspic, right? Like it's just the double agent thing it was interesting in a premise, and it just didn't execute as well as I wanted it to.
Yeah, there's an interesting story here, like you said, and I enjoy the complexity of this spy who, is working for the Brits, and they say, hey, there's this KGB agent, Kresnevin, who's killing off our guys. We want you to track him down and kill him. And knowing that it's himself.
It's him,
And I think that's an interesting aspect that we have here. That's an interesting aspic that we have here.
Don't ever. You've done it one. You had one. You've used it.
And so I want to say that they, I like that idea of this spy who is hired to kill himself, this other alter ego. I mean, it sounds so dumb when you say it that way. And like even the poster, a double agent ordered to kill himself. Like it sounds so stupid when you say it that way. But like who's hired to, or who's tasked with the job to kill the spy that he actually is. Like I think it's a fascinating story. And I think maybe what happened with this film is there's an interesting story in that idea that makes it harder to really get into, when at the same time, Kresnevin is actually, he's been doing this for 18 years and he's just like really done with it and really just wants to go home. And that's another aspect of his character. I almost did it. that that maybe we didn't need. Like maybe this story would have played better if he also wasn't completely done with the job and just ready to quit. And maybe the fact that we're also following this really mopey spy who's just like, I just want to go home. Why won't you let me go home?
Back to
I'm
Russia.
gonna just try to get across the eastern over to East Berlin without any permission.
Oh my God, you're right. This whole movie is based on the premise of, nuh-uh, you can't make me.
Yeah, right. He's just mopey McMoperstein.
Yeah.
And I think that aspect of this spy story is one of the things that that made it harder for me to really click with. Like, I think that the other assassination plot idea is interesting, and you've got Tom Courtenay as the other British agent who thinks that it's him, and even though he's perpetually throwing other people at it, trying to say, "Oh no, it was really Harry or whoever," and I guess that's blending these stories. I think that it just made it a messier story that just didn't play as well, or maybe it wasn't written as well, or directed as well. It's so hard to say, but what we get just didn't work as well for me.
I never felt the intensity of threat in this movie, which is kind of diabolical in a movie where the premise is what this movie's is. Yeah. It should have been Hitchcock, right? This should have been a Hitchcock. It should have had like North by Northwest vibes, right? Like yeah. I could have gotten behind that. This was just more or less inert. And even the final moments, I did like Courtenay. I liked Courtenay a lot. And I liked that he was sort of our avatar for identity discovery. I thought he was fun, but even to the very final moment, I was a little bit perplexed at how we had gotten here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I guess it just plays. It does feel like a first novel. Like this is Derek Marlowe's first novel. And I can't remember if he had been working in the screenplay world beforehand. He had been writing some scripts and stuff around the same time. So this book he wrote about the same time he was also working in screenplays. And so I think to that end, it does feel early in his career as somebody who's plotting this spy story that just doesn't feel like he's ready to be Jean Le Carre yet, Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and I think either take it in the Hitchcock North by Northwest direction or take it in the John Le Carre direction. Either one of those, you could have really developed a strong story. As it is, it feels like it's not quite there. It doesn't have the pieces to actually deliver.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the that maybe there were just too many layers of espionage, and the team behind adapting this wasn't able to really deliver the intensity, because there are so many great movies about this same concept, right? Spy versus spy getting across a border, like that are just done with so much more energy and kind of intellect and emotion and enthusiasm and threat. And this movie was just ended up feeling more inert. It's not a terrible movie, but it's not one I need to, go back to.
We could probably just put this movie in Aspic.
We could, and it would make a hell of a centerpiece. It's just a DVD of this movie. Did you? I mean, and this is a missed opportunity for this movie. I don't think anybody ate Aspic in this movie at all.
Right. We never have.
Not on a train. No. Not on a plane. Okay. So you didn't, do we know? I mean, did you happen to look at what the book was like, what was left out of the book?
It's, the book is apparently so forgotten, perhaps also because of the title, that it doesn't even have its own Wikipedia page. Like there's no way to, unless I went and bought a copy of the book, I found it very difficult to just get solid plot breakdowns of the book, you know. So I don't know. I'm not sure how much they changed. I do know that Derek Marlowe, when it came to the film, he ended up saying that he really didn't like what Lawrence Harvey did in the film. He didn't work at all for him. And he said that once he took over as director, he felt that it really kind of fell apart after that. So again, I don't think he directed that much, but as you said, he still was in charge of the editing and everything. And so
I didn't catch that many differences between the book and the movie either in what I read, except for the fact that Lawrence Harvey's portrayal of Eberlin in the film is described as stiffer and less dandy-like than the character in the book. They wanted the character in the book to be more, I guess, foppish somehow, and that didn't come across.
Oh, that doesn't come across at all. Like, that was one thing. Like, the only thing dandyish about Lawrence Harvey in the film is that he's wearing Pierre Cardin suits. Like, he's dressed nicely, but he's dour. He just seems like a, sad grump all the time who just wants to go home. And nothing about it seems like a personable guy. Like, even when he's out at restaurants and stuff, like that first place where Mia Farrow meets him, he's pretty much an ass to every single person there, right? Mm-hmm. Like the old lady that's there, like he's not nice to anybody. And so I'm like, okay, this isn't a guy who is really drawing a crowd, his own following and everything, like you'd see with the dandy and everything. This is just not a person that you'd want to be around. And so that's definitely something that just doesn't come across at all.
Right. And I wonder if there are, in the same respect, if we're given purpose in the character Mia Farrow plays in the book in a way that didn't translate to film.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's talk about Lawrence Harvey. I mean, I don't think we've discussed any of his films on our podcast before. His probably most famous, I mean, Room at the Top is a big one because I believe he got an Oscar nomination for that one. But The Manchurian Candidate, and for my money, is the one that is like the film that I think of when I think of Lawrence Harvey.
Yeah. And his still on Wikipedia, he looks just like Glenn Powell. Can't you see it? Like Glenn Powell play Lawrence Harvey.
Except he's again dour and Glenn Powell is always smiling.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, look at this picture, his black and white picture, and he's smiling. He looks like actually maybe he's an agent in the Matrix. Anyway, so yeah, The Manchurian Candidate for the win on this one. That's the one I have.
Hey, off.
We've got some real action.
Nope, come here. Lie down. What's going on? Why are you freaking? Let's see if Olivia is having a friend here.
I do love that Lawrence Harvey, speaking of movies with great titles, it's as if they saw a dandy and Aspic and were like, maybe we can be a little bit clearer. And so we're going to do a movie called The Spy with a Cold Nose. What a great time to freeze.
Isn't that great? I lost you. I cannot hear you at all.
Hi.
There you are.
Did you hear what I said?
The Spy with a Cold Nose.
Yeah, isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
Well,
that is but that one is designed to be a comedy. And that's where you think like The Spy with a Cold Nose and then the sequel, A Dandy and Aspic. Like it seems like they should be.
You don't ever want to put your dandy in Aspic, Andy.
Just like you don't want to have a cold nose when you're a spy.
Okay. I haven't seen very much of what he's done except for this now and The Manchurian Candidate, but I think he's great. He's good at what he does.
I really do enjoy watching him. Room at the Top is definitely one you should check out. It's a great film. And he was in, what was the other one that I was thinking of that he was in? Darling, John Schlesinger.
Nice
John
job.
Schlesinger's film is another good one. He's just somebody I like. And it's funny because I've been thinking about him a lot lately because I just watched, to complete my Tony Scott filmography, I just watched Domino. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yes.
Did you know that, or did you remember that Domino, the bounty hunter, is Lawrence Harvey's daughter? That's
What?
like a big part of that story.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
She's Lawrence Harvey's daughter.
What?
Yeah, she died when he was 4. No, he died when she was 4.
Then how was she in that movie?
Yeah. He died in 1973, stomach cancer. He was a big drinker and smoker. Died in 73. She was only 4 years old. And she grew up to be a bounty hunter and ended up dying herself of a fentanyl overdose when she was 35, right before the movie came out.
That was who played her? Was it
Keira Knightley.
Keira Knightley? God, that's crazy. I did not make that connection.
Yeah. Well, you just didn't remember it because they did definitely talk about it quite a bit in the film.
Yeah, but that's a clear way of putting it because I wasn't thinking about Lawrence Harvey and I didn't put Domino on that list.
Yeah. Well, and it only both of these films happened to fall into my life within the same week. So it was just I was definitely much more thinking about it than I normally would go, oh, it's that guy. Yeah, that Nigerian candidate guy. Yeah.
Why did Domino fall into your life this week?
I was just trying to finish my Tony Scott filmography.
Oh, that's right. You said so. Yeah. Tony Scott. Fascinating. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, interesting. Go watch Domino. Might be better than this.
Well, I had a fun time with it. Critics might put them at the same level.
It's a rough. I mean, it's a 5.9 on IMDb. If
you're into what he's doing with it, it's pretty fun. I had a fun time with it.
I definitely like it.
But back to this one. So Lawrence Harvey, the thing about him is I actually think that he is a good choice to play the role. I think he carries himself well. I like his look in the film. He really gives me that vibe of the spy who came in from the cold sort of vibe. He seems like the John Le Carre worn down spy who's really trying to figure out how to get out of this life. I enjoy him a lot in the story, but I just don't think that the script is delivering as much as it needs to make him work completely,
Yeah. And I couldn't help but feel like he's just, there's another universe where he gets Bond.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He could have pulled off Bond and been a really interesting sort of participant in that universe. And Bond in some portrayals is more of a dandy than he ever was in this movie.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely.
Looking at you, Roger.
Which is interesting. Yeah. And I guess we should also, and you kind of mentioned it already, but he did take over directing this film when Anthony Mann died part of the way through filming. And so he did helm. It's unclear how much he actually directed of the film. I couldn't find anything that specified. I saw one thing that said Anthony Mann directed for 2 weeks and then died. I saw something that said Lawrence Harvey came in and directed the last 2 weeks. So was it a 4-week shoot? Was it 50-50? Was the time mixed up and nobody really has a clear sense? I don't know. All we know is that Anthony Mann started directing it. Lawrence Harvey came in and finished it and then handled it, the editing and everything. But
you and I are close. I think I could tie break that vote because for me it was Anthony Mann shot most of the movie and Harvey came in the last 10% of shooting and then post.
Yeah, I did see something
which is about
Lawrence
2
Harvey.
weeks.
Yeah, I did see something that said Lawrence Harvey directed everything in that the car race location that we had toward the end of the film and some of Berlin, and that everything in London was Anthony Mann, and he did some of Berlin. So
yeah, interesting. Well, and a troublesome place for it to be. I want to go back to that question though of given that we know that the hands that guide this movie were changed pretty dramatically toward the end of filming, where do you see it in the film? Where do you see inconsistencies in the film? Where does the tone change for you?
Well, I don't feel like I'm seeing tone changes. And again, I think that just is, I know Lawrence Harvey had directed other things, but I don't know if he's a director who I ever said has a stamp. You know, I mean, his directing is so limited that I just don't think that there's much to go on. Whereas Anthony Mann, I think as a director, I mean, probably most known for his noir films like T-Men and what's the Side Street? Yeah, Side Street, Raw Deal, and then also a lot of the westerns that he ended up doing. Like he did a lot of westerns, and he became known for landscapes. Like that was a big thing that Anthony Mann was really good at, is using landscapes, especially in the westerns. And I think, you know, as somebody who is a big fan of location shooting, you definitely get that here. Like we're in a lot of these locations filming Berlin and the racetrack and the airports and trains. And like you get a sense that that was a big part of what he was bringing to the table. And also he's a big fan of the anti-hero character. And you do see that, you can see his draw to Eberlin in this film is like, this is really this character who is cynical and wants to find peace by going home but can't, and so is you know, you can see that real anti-hero character here. And I think that's what I'm getting out of this film from Mann as a director. I don't know, like I guess if anything, with the very end of the film, like it must have been Lawrence Harvey's decision to shoot that final moment the way he did with the kind of with Gaddis running Eberlin down, you know, and then the freeze frame and everything. And I'm guessing that's kind of like one of the things that he maybe contributed, but I don't know. I don't know if I can see any specific line in there.
Yeah, I can't either. And a lot of the sort of review material that I was reading were like, oh, stylistic inconsistency and loss of directorial vision. And, you know, there was nothing really specific about, you know, the fact that the change led to something that we'd see on screen. And in fact, the film's troubled production likely contributed to its mixed reviews. I don't think that's true. I think the mixed reviews were because the movie is mixed. I don't think it necessarily has anything to do with the fact that the hands changed. The movie didn't hold up, and for me as a thriller, and that just seems like core material problems.
It does make me wonder, again, going back to our fair author, Derek Marlowe, who this was his first novel that he had written, and he then adapted the screenplay. And then he complained. It sounds like he was happy with Mann. Maybe he also didn't want to say anything about Mann after Mann had passed away. But he very specifically just says, you know, that Lawrence Harvey was terrible in the role, and he ruined the, you know, once he took over, he just ruined the film. You know, I don't know. It's so hard to say, like what, how that changed. But I can't help but think maybe it's just in the script, and it was just a difficult, not as strongly written script to start with.
You know, reviews and criticism of the book, it was well received. That it is a well-crafted prose. Great psychological depth. It has literary aspirations, but still functions as a tense spy thriller, saying that the style is beautiful and proficient on a technical level. Like there's a lot of praise for this book. And the kind of praise that I see in the reviews for the book, I just don't see on screen.
Well, but I think part of that also falls to knowing how to write a script.
Yeah.
It's a very different world. It's a different animal. I think there's, in a spy story, you can, and again, neither of us have read the book. It's not very easy to get some clear, like plot breakdowns and synopses of it that are a little more in depth, because it's just a harder one to track down. But you can get into the character's head better. You can get a better sense as to who they are, what they're thinking. And when you translate into a screenplay, I just think that there's some authors don't know how to not think internally, because everything in a script basically has to be external. Yes, the actor then will take that and internalize a lot of the stuff, but a screenplay page is really just written to be a bunch of external stuff that the director and the actors then are figuring out, how are we going to put this on screen? And I just, like, maybe Derek just didn't know how to translate that. Who knows? Maybe Lawrence didn't know how to kind of handle it in the editing. I mean, there's a lot of different potentials, but we just don't know.
And yet it's still a movie that shows up at 6.2 on the IMDb scale. Like, people like it. So I'm feeling just a touch like an island.
Well, I don't hate it. I mean, I think it's an interesting film. I mean, I think 6, that would be 3. I mean, it might be a little higher than I'd go, but I still thought it was an interesting film. I mean, I was engaged. I enjoyed a lot of the elements that were going on throughout it. You know, I think it could be a lot cleaner, but I still enjoyed it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We liked Tom Courtenay. Peter Cook, I thought, was really funny. Peter Cook is an actor that I generally think of in is it Bedazzled? It's Bedazzled, which is he plays the devil in the original version of Bedazzled. I don't know if you've seen that one.
No.
Then it's pretty fun. It's him, Dudley Moore, and Raquel Welch is the woman that he kind of creates for Dudley in that film. It's that whole Faustian story. But what was the it was Brendan Fraser, and who played the devil in the it was, what's her name? Elizabeth Hurley, right?
In Bedazzled?
In the remake.
I don't know. You're making it up. I've never seen it. As far as I know, it doesn't exist.
Well, okay, so you're not familiar of the remake either?
No.
Well, okay, there was a remake in 2000 directed by, I think it was Harold Ramis. Yeah, Harold Ramis. Brendan Fraser is in the Dudley Moore part, and Elizabeth Hurley is the devil in that version of the film. I haven't seen that one, but the original one is pretty fun. Peter Cook, who wrote the script, also plays the devil, and he's delightful in that film as the devil. And so it was really fun to see him as this completely randy spy who is just like all about like laying all the women that he could throughout, like everywhere he went. Like that made me laugh quite a bit with his character, because it felt like, were they doing some form of their own little James Bond spoof with him, you know, as the one who's always got all the women everywhere.
He was the impressive clergyman, of course, in The Princess Bride. Marriage.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah. That was my connection. I immediately thought maybe that's why it completely blinded me to Bedazzled.
Well, I don't know if the remake, I've never seen it. I don't know if it's worth watching at all, but certainly the original one is a fun one to check out.
Apparently he has listed his last credit, on IMDb is titled, it's a video that I must get immediately. It is titled Peter Cook Talks Golf Balls. And that just feels like something we need to be a part of.
That's very funny. Yeah. Very, very funny.
Yeah. No, I like him. I like him a lot. And that's to, you know, generally the cast is fantastic. Have we mentioned Lionel Stander yet?
No. And that was a funny one, because he's the Russian that won't let Eberlin come back. And seeing him, I mean, I think of his face in like the spaghetti westerns that he was in, like Once Upon a Time in the West, like that's where my head goes with him. And so seeing him pop up as this like Russian leader was really strange, because it just funny. Definitely did not seem to completely fit, even though like same year as Once Upon a Time in the West, but it just didn't seem like that. Seems more his world than this.
And you didn't do a lot of Heart to Heart in the 80s?
I didn't. I never watched Heart to Heart. I mean, I maybe watched an episode or two, but it wasn't like a regular.
I have to imagine getting Lionel Stander as a regular on that show was an incredible coup. for the showrunners.
I mean, he's been around. I can't remember if we talked about him much, but like he was way back in the 1937 Star is Born. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
That's a man who is a great face, and he has been around the block.
Quite a career.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. He's fun. Mia Farrow, did we talk much about Mia Farrow other than we just didn't like her much?
Well, we didn't like the character of Caroline.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, that it doesn't say much about Mia Farrow. And this was in Mia Farrow's deeply adorable years, the adorable era of Mia Farrow.
This was also in the era she was married to Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
And this production went over schedule-wise. And apparently Frank Sinatra was so pissed that she wasn't coming home right away that he was calling every day to the production demanding that they let her leave every single day. Shortly after this, she got divorced from Frank Sinatra. I think there was a lot of his behavior. I mean, she was young. He was 30 years older than her. I think there was a lot of reasons that she's just like,
Yeah.
I'm done with this.
But then did she go directly from him to Woody?
No, Andre Previn.
Oh, right. Of course.
Yeah. And it wasn't
Andre
direct.
Previn.
It was several years before.
Yeah.
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 I just got to say, going back to these stories of people and their relationships, Lawrence Harvey, he had several wives. His first wife for a few years, then Joan Perry, and then Pauline Stone. He married her right before, like a year before he died. He had Domino with his last wife while he was still married to his second wife.
What?
Yeah. 2 years before they get divorced, he has a child with another woman.
Oh my God. There is just such a thing in my head. I cannot imagine having the kind of time to have those kinds of relationships.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Two last things I want to talk about. One is the title sequence, which is actually, I really enjoyed. It reminded me of the game because, again, we have, the teaser trailer for the game where it is a marionette puppet on its strings and it's just being shaken and moved around in more violent ways until it essentially dies.
Yeah.
Like that was a fantastic title sequence. What did you think of that?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was really great and it's really of the era. Like it just feels like here's something we're going to do that's kind of weird and 60s. And they didn't even know it because it was the 60s. I found it really, and now everything's frozen.
Completely gone.
And I don't know. I'm just still talking about 60s. 60s. The 60s.
I missed everything you said. Your audio stopped.
Okay. Because I said a lot of stuff.
That was great. I agree.
No, it was of the 60s. It was deeply dated to me and very cool and weird and just felt like it I don't know. The challenge that I have with that kind of a title is I don't know if it fit the movie because it got so frenetic by the end. It just sort of spazzes out and it feels less dandy and less sophisticated. So it's neither of the message that the movie is sending or the message that the movie wanted to send.
And they don't put it in Aspic either.
And it's never once is there a mannequin in Aspic.
Do you think at the end of the film somebody gave Anthony or Lawrence Harvey the marionette puppet in Aspic as a gift?
That would be so great.
Maybe that was the crew gifts for everybody. Maybe everyone just got Aspic. Pork foot Aspic.
And remember The Office when Jim puts the stapler in Aspic?
Yes.
Crazy. An Aspic mold.
Yeah. Oh my God. Last thing I wanted to
just completely rewritten.
I know
my understanding of gelatinous substances thanks to this movie.
The last thing that was worth mentioning is Quincy Jones, who does the music. Yeah. I enjoy it. It's very 60s. It's of its era. And I just think it's funny that, we just talked about The Split last week with Quincy Jones doing the music. And here we are back with more Quincy Jones with the Dandy and Aspic.
I thought it was great.
Lots of scores this period.
Maybe that's why I thought the marionette worked because the music is so good in the opening. And it just feels like like maybe Quincy's actually working the marionette himself. Maybe it's tied to his baton as he's conducting. It just feels like a Quincy Jones thing.
I love it.
R.I.P.
Yeah, rest in peace. Absolutely. That pretty much covers it, man.
Yeah. It's a weirdo movie. I liked it.
It's an interesting one. Yeah.
Didn't love it.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back. But first, our credits.
The Next Reel is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson, music by Ilyona Harpaz, Sandy Pierce, Benjamin Esterlise, Oriel Novella, and Eli Catlin. Andy usually finds all the stats for the awards and numbers at d-numbers.com, boxofficemojo.com, imdb.com, and wikipedia.org. Find the show at truestory.fm, and if your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show. Is this me?
This is you.
Feeling trapped in the gelatinous prison of indecision about what to watch next? Stuck in the goo of endless scrolling through streaming services? Well, darling, let me tell you about Letterboxd, the only social platform suave enough for a dandy, yet sticky enough to catch all your movie thoughts. Have you ever considered that you might be leading a double life, pretending you've seen Citizen Kane when really you haven't? With Letterboxd, you can track every film you've actually watched, create lists of what you'd like to see, and follow other cinema sophisticates who share your impeccable taste. Don't let your movie memories get preserved in the gelatin and... Don't let your movie memories get preserved in the gelatin of the forgotten. Join the most elegant film diary service this side of the Iron Curtain. Rate films, write witty reviews, and discover new favorites, all while maintaining that perfect dandy facade. And speaking of being trapped, break free from full price. Use code NEXTREEL at checkout for 20% off Letterboxd Pro. No more ads, new ways to customize your profile, better stats. That's right, darling. Even a double agent can appreciate that sort of good discount. Letterboxd, because every dandy needs a cover, and every film lover needs a home. Visit thenextreel.com/letterboxd and join today. I don't even know what I was going for with that.
That was great. You brought the dandy and the aspic in.
Right.
It's great.
Okie smoky. Here we go. Numbers, Andy. A box office smash like this movie. Surely the budgets are preserved in Aspic for you to later reassemble.
I think more Hollywood accountants need to preserve these things in Aspic.
Just the Paramount vault is just shelf after shelf of budgets in Jell-O molds.
Unfortunately, this was a real tough one, man. All I could find for Mann's last and final film was that it opened April 2nd, 1968, here in the States, and then 2 days later in London. Outside of that, there is nothing on how much it cost or how well it did, unfortunately.
Crazy. Do you remember the days when we talked about movies that you could get data on?
Yeah, I know. I feel like it wasn't that long ago, yet at the same time it seems like it was forever.
Forever. Well, I'm glad we watched this movie. I'm glad we got it on the list, and you just had an awakening.
I just remembered there was a whole thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I'm surprised that you didn't bring it up.
Okay.
We end this film at a car race, and you're a big car race guy. There's a person who really was into the car race information who provided some information on IMDb's trivia page. The motor race featured toward the end of the movie runs on the then Automobilverkehrs- und Übungsstraße, AVUS, in Berlin. The course principally consisted of public roads capped toward the north by the, quote, wall of death, a turn paved with bricks and banks at 43 degrees. Drivers were advised to quite literally stay in their lane whilst on that banking. Note the absence of any guardrail or safety barrier. The course last hosted a Formula One race in 1959, and that banked turn was dismantled in 1967. No race has been held at AVUS since 1998.
That that circuit is bananas. Do you see the shape of it?
I didn't look at the actual image.
So why it's okay for a race track, it's fun for drivers, this kind of a track, because it's basically just two long straightaways with a very tight curve at both ends, tighter at one end than the other, and there is a giant conical control tower in the middle of the bigger end, and so racers just get to go all out twice, which makes it extraordinarily dangerous on every lap because they don't always slow down to appropriate cornering speeds. That's what makes it so dangerous at F1 in particular, and why it didn't become a staple course in the circuit. There are others that are better, but now apparently you can go eat in that conical control tower. It's a restaurant.
Oh, look at that. Wow.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, you can see images online of that 43-degree angle curve at the end, and that's insane. Like that is insane. A steep curve.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's almost half of 90 degrees. Just picture that, and that's how steep it is.
It's almost half. You're right, almost half. Mathematically, almost half.
All right. Well, it was an interesting movie. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I have it in my oeuvre of things that I've watched and that we've discussed. So thanks for putting it on the list.
Too. Hey, I'm glad to do you a service.
All right. Well, we'll be right back for our ratings. But first, here's the trailer for next week's movie, kicking off our return to our spoiled, rotten, twist endings series. We are looking at Wolfgang Petersen's 1991 film, Shattered.
There's so many Shattereds. No, I haven't watched it yet.
Okay. You asked me like you were going to go, you're getting ready to push play on something.
I was, and then I realized, oh my God, I have Sitting in the Dark on Tuesday, and I had to watch all three of those movies. So
Gotcha.
Now it's you.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. Okay, here we go. We all lead double lives in a way. There's the face we show to the world, and then there's the truth we keep hidden, buried deep within ourselves. It's a delicate balance, a tightrope walk between who we pretend to be and who we really are. I should know. As a member of the next reel, I've been living a double life for years. On the surface, I'm just another film enthusiast, discussing movies with a passion that borders on obsession. But beneath that facade, there's a deeper truth, a secret mission that drives everything I do. You see, the next reel isn't just a community of film lovers. Oh no. It's a covert... I just lost my place. Hold on. It's a covert operation, a cinematic spy network dedicated to uncovering the hidden meanings and secret messages embedded in every frame of film. Our agents are scattered across the globe, each one a master of deception, a chameleon who can blend in with any crowd. They analyze movies with the skill of a seasoned operative, dissecting plot twists and character arcs like a codebreaker cracking an enemy cipher. But there's a catch. In order to maintain our cover, we have to keep our true identities hidden, even from each other. We communicate through coded messages, using the language of film to pass secrets back and forth, always staying one step ahead of those who would seek to expose us. It's a dangerous game, but it's one that we're willing to play, because the stakes are high and the rewards are immeasurable. By joining the next reel, you too can become a part of this secret world, a double agent in the service of cinema. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you can gain access to our network of spies, our library of classified films, and our archive of covert analysis. You'll receive ad-free episodes and extended editions that go deeper than any civilian could ever imagine. But be warned, once you join us, there's no going back. You'll have to learn to live a double life, to keep your true identity hidden from even your closest friends and family. You'll have to become a master of deception, a chameleon who can adapt to any situation. It's a challenging life, but it's one that's filled with excitement, intrigue, and the thrill of the chase. And in the end, isn't that what we all crave? A chance to be something more than what we seem? To live a life that's filled with purpose and meaning? So if you're ready to take the plunge, if you're ready to join the ranks of the next reel's cinematic spies, then head over to truestory.fm/join and sign up today. But remember, once you're in, there's no turning back. You'll have to live the double life, always keeping one eye on the shadows, never knowing who you can trust. Are you ready to become a spy in the service of cinema? Then join us and let the games begin.
I mean, technically, you can quit. We're not going to keep you in there forever.
You can, yeah.
You can have it. You can stop. We won't auto rebill if you tell us to. It's fine.
But you'll always have been part of the club.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And we'll ask you to forget the handshake. Letterboxd, Andy. Letterboxd. Now this is always one of those interesting dances. The dance of stars and hearts. This one, it's not a slam dunk 5-star. It's not even a banger of a 4-star. It's possibly even less. What are you going to do?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. Like, I feel like a 2.5 is where I'm going to land with a heart. Like, I still enjoyed this well enough to give it a heart. Like, it was interesting. There were some interesting elements going on in the story. Mia Farrow is the biggest drag down for me. And after that, it's just like there was just some of the plot elements that just weren't as cohesive as I wanted them to be. So I think 2.5 with a heart is still decent.
My problem, as you know, is that it's either 2 stars or 3 stars, heart or no heart. There's no in between. There's no in between because I am comfortable making hard decisions.
You have to go from 40% straight to 60%.
That's really it. 50% could be 2 stars and a heart, but that just looks ridiculous. I think I'm going to go 3 stars, no heart, because I accept what's going on in the film. I absolutely think they're doing some interesting things, and there's some good performances. And you're right, Mia Farrow and all of that. And also, I don't know that it's going to be one I ever return to.
Yeah,
I think I'm done.
Yeah,
that's kind of no heart behavior.
Well, I guess to that end, now I'm debating if I should give it a heart because I'm like, I'm probably not going to return to this film. But yeah, I'm 2.5, so I'm okay giving it a heart for now. So that will average out to 2.75 and a heart, which will round up to 3 stars over on our Letterboxd account at The Next Reel. You can find me there at Soda Creek Film. You can find Pete there at Pete Wright. So what did you think about A Dandy in Aspic? We would love to hear your thoughts. Hop into the Show Talk channel over in our Discord community, where we will be talking about the movie this week.
When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Letterboxd giveth, Andrew.
As Letterboxd always doeth.
Oh, my goodness. People have long thoughts about this movie.
There are a lot of long write-ups, for sure.
What do you think? You got one in the bag you're really excited about?
I'm not really excited about any of them, unfortunately. I'm going to go with this one. We'll see what we think. It's a little more serious. Good moody atmosphere in late 60s London and Berlin. I was enjoying it as it seemed to have a well-crafted setup for some intriguing double agent thrills, but then it felt like it barely capitalized on the promising premise. I liked all the robes people were wearing. That was a 3-star from M.
I liked all the robes.
Yeah, great robes.
Excellent. Well, I've got a 3-star from Chris who says, for a movie with Dandy in the title starring a gay actor whose character gets called sexless multiple times, this was disappointingly heterosexual. No offense to Mia Farrow, of course. Also, I really wanted to like this so I could get into Lawrence Harvey and add another gay British actor to my list. And he was hot, but I don't know. He just had no screen presence whatsoever, and it barely felt like he was in the movie at all. I'll give him another chance or two.
Yeah, there's that whole aspect of his life. The gay aspect.
Yeah, there is that aspect we did not mention.
That aspect.
Oh, God, you've done it again.
Did it again. Sorry.
Okay. You're just really stuck on the Aspic puns. Thanks, Letterboxd.